Once you've opened Reaper and you have your project saved and named, if this is the first time you record, you're going to need to first set your preferences to ensure that you can actually record some audio and Reaper is connected to the correct audio interface. So what you're going to need to do is open up the Reaper preferences, which can be found by clicking Reaper Preferences, or you can hit Control, comma on a Windows device or Command, comma on a Mac, and that will open your Reaper preferences. It always defaults to the last window you had open in preferences. So if I was on general, it would have defaulted here. There are a lot of options. And don't worry, because 90% of them you don't need. They're all broken into categories. So it makes things a lot easier when you're trying to find something. We're worried about recording, and recording is audio, so we're going to go to the audio category. And then we want to make sure we have the right device set up. So our input device, audio device, is what we're looking for. Audio device is our little drop down. This will show all of the devices that are on your machine. You want to set it to the device that you plan to use, obviously. In my case, I have a bunch of different devices. I'm going to select AGO6, AGO3 because that's my audio interface for my typical recording. Hit apply and OK. Now we're locked in. Now, if you don't have a track, this is a track that you record on. If you don't have a track and your window looks like this, you can hit Command T or Control T to add a new track, or you can double click in this area and it'll automatically add a track for you. When you delete a track, it asks you if you would like to delete it, so you don't just accidentally go and delete your tracks all the time. Next thing you have to worry about before you record is arming your track. Now you can have multiple tracks set up at one time in Reaper, and it can be very handy when you have things like a music bed or multiple voices or something like that. But the problem with that is, how does it know which one you actually want to record to? In order to tell Reaper which track you want to record to, you arm the track, and that's done with this little button here. Once you've armed the track, you should see your audio levels bouncing like this. That means that you're armed and it hears you. And it should honestly be bouncing with the noise in the room or your voice. In this case, it's bouncing with my voice, so I know that Reaper hears me. The final thing that might cause you to not have these little meters bouncing showing you that the input is working after you've armed your track, because notice, they don't bounce when you haven't armed your track. If you arm your track and you have nothing, the last thing you want to worry about is this little input drop down. There's a little drop down here. Your inputs are typically going to be mono. If you've got it on the wrong one, notice it goes away. Input 1 is typically what you want. If you have an interface like a single mic, that's a USB mic, like this is the Samson Q2U I'm talking to you on, that microphone only has one input, and so it'll default to input 1, and that's the one you're going to be looking for. Now it's just about time to actually record something in Reaper. So we have our track armed. We can see it's bouncing when I talk. The last thing I want to do before I actually hit record is just a personal preference thing. Since Reaper was originally intended to record music, you can see up here it actually has, in addition to seconds, which is the bottom number, it has measures and beats. So if you right-click the time bar and choose minutes and seconds, it'll make it a little more obvious what is being indicated up there, especially if you're not a musician. So here's my script on the left. I'm going to go ahead and hit record, and with me I've got my trusty dog clicker. I always recommend you have a dog clicker because it lets you indicate that, oh, I made a mistake, and it highlights it. I'll just show you really quick what it looks like. I'm rolling. To click this, I made a mistake just in what I was saying. Click the dog clicker, and it spikes the audio. So I'll show you this stuff a little closer here, but you can see that as the audio is spiked, you can see that, oh, right there I made a mistake, and you can easily delete it later. For now, I'm just going to delete that. You'll hear me use the dog clicker if I trip over something or I don't like how something sounds. I'll hit the dog clicker, I'll go back, and I'll re-record a part. And then later on, we'll use Reaper to really quickly stitch it all back together a lot faster than you would have done it in Audacity, with a lot more fine-tuning. I'm going to hit record, hit the home key to jump my thing back to the beginning of the track. To record, you either click the big red circle, or you can hit Control-R on a Windows machine or Command-R on a Mac. So here we go, rolling. Oh, one more thing before we start recording. I'm going to turn on my fan, which is silly, but I want to simulate the environment that you might be working in. Right now, my air conditioner is not running. It's kind of cool outside, so I'm going to kick my fan on, which will simulate an HVAC unit maybe running nearby, or you're in an office and there's someone in the desk next to you that's got their fan going, and there's just a constant hum. Or maybe you have a microphone that has some hum, and we'll talk about how to remove that noise, or at least decrease it later on during our editing. So here's the fan. It's got just a nice low hum. All right, so I'm going to hit record. Now we're rolling. You can see the waveform with my voice there. Welcome to my NRCS career. Whether you've been an employee at NRCS for years or you're just getting started with us, the My NRCS Career Virtual Career Center can help you discover and plan out the many options that await you, so you can grow your career at NRCS. This tutorial will provide a brief overview of some of the ways you can use the Virtual Career Center to grow as an NRCS employee. You can explore many possible career options, both within and across occupations. Identify the next steps in your career and the developmental opportunities you need to reach your goals, and access resources to help you apply and take your next step. Now, let's get started. So that was 1.1. I'm going to go ahead and click after it to show Reaper where I want to insert the next recording. And I'm going to go ahead and hit record again and record 1.2. As you explore career options at NRCS, you'll see information for positions in different career groups, such as soil conservation and engineering, with more career groups being added soon. Within the soil conservation career group, for example, you'll see 2 occupations that represent various career tracks in this group: soil conservation technician, and soil conservation technician and soil conservationist. Let's take a look at the soil conservation technician occupation as an example. Shut off my fan. There we go. So we're recorded. I've got 2 items in Reaper, and when we talk about editing a little more thoroughly, we're going to talk about items. So next up, let's move into editing these tracks, trimming out the mistakes, and how the items actually make things easier to edit than you could have even imagined in Audacity. All right, now let's go ahead and edit this. Let's make the window a little bit bigger so we have a little more room. Hide the script and zoom in. So you hold Control or Command and scroll the mouse wheel, and you can zoom in nicely. Use Control and Command to increase the vertical height of the track, and then release Control Command and just move your mouse wheel to zoom in and stretch it horizontally. Let's go ahead, and first thing we want to do is get rid of that fan noise, right? We had that fan going in the background. You can hear some of it here. So if I highlight a section and I hit the R key, I can turn on repeat, and that's this little toggling repeat button. If I hit play, it'll play back this short, maybe a second. Let's see. Selection length is 1.5 seconds, so we can hit play. And that is running the entire time behind the narration. And you don't want that because it sounds kind of annoying. Now what we can do is, that actually was a good place for that, because we need a sample of the noise in order to get Reaper to be able to remove it from our recording. So we'll go ahead and we'll select that sample of noise, because that's what we're going to want to remove. Now we're going to apply an effect to this, and this is where Reaper really shines over Audacity. So we go to this little FX, and these are our are effects that are applied to the track. If it's green, the effects that are applied to the track will turn on. I have some default effects that are there. I'll show you those in a second. And when it's red, they're off. And when there's, go ahead and remove these all real quick. Just my default effects stack for voiceover. So when it's gray, there's no effects applied to the track. So we'll go ahead and we'll click the effects button, and that will show us our empty effects rack. We'll have an add and remove button, and then mine defaults to open this effects browser. You might have to click add to open your effects browser, and it'll open in another window. The cool thing about Reaper is everything is customizable. So you can pull this out. Now to get this back in the dock, we just right click on an empty area of the window, which is kind of hard to find in this one, but it's like these gray areas. And then you want to hit dock effects browser back in Docker, and it'll throw it down here. And then you can adjust the direction of these tabs. You can have multiple Dockers, which I usually have set up. So I have multiple Dockers. So you can really get really flexible with the layout of Reaper. But anyway, back to adding effects. You hit add. You have this here. Now, the effect we want to use to remove noise, especially like a steady noise like that. You see I have Acon Digital Denoise. That would do it, but that's a paid plugin. And you can do this for free in Reaper. There's no need to purchase anything. So there's a plugin called Refer, R-E-A, which means it's a Reaper plugin, F-I-R, which stands for something I don't understand. So here's Refer. You can either double click it and it'll add it to the effects track window that you have open, or you can drag it in. So this is Refer. Now, I know this window can look a little bit intimidating, but don't worry about it. We're going to talk about the basic controls that you need out of it, and honestly, this is the only thing I ever use this for. So, what we've got here is Refer can analyze frequencies and then pull those frequencies out. The first thing we need to change is our mode. Now, our mode we want to worry about is our subtract mode because we're removing a sound. So, we'll choose subtract. The next thing we want to worry about is our edit mode, and we want to move that to precise. Then, this little kind of sample size here, I find best it works around 1024. So now that we have those set up, precise, 1024, and subtract, what we have is this little box that shows up here, automatically build noise profile enabled during noise. So we're going to check that box, and we're going to make sure that we're only playing when the noise is on in the background. We don't want any other sound like voice or background audio or thumps or anything like that, because that will pull additional frequencies out. So let's hit play. We can just do that by hitting spacebar. You can see it's playing in the background here, and you can see it's building the noise profile. Every time it goes through, it grabs another sample of the noise profile. And it's pretty much stopped, so we'll stop here. And then you want to uncheck the box to build the profile because we're done building it. We've got it here. And now if we hit play, we won't hear any noise. And we'll close the effects browser window. If we shut off repeat, it'll continue playing through, and we should hear the voice pretty much just fine. Welcome to My NRCS Career. Whether you've been an employee at NRCS for years or you're just getting started with us, the My NRCS Career Virtual Career Center can help you discover and plan out the many options that await you. So that's done with the noise profile. I think that sounds really good, actually. What we can do, if for some reason maybe it made the voice sound a little robotic, maybe it didn't sound that great, you can hold the Control key on Windows or the Command key on Mac, and you can grab this and you can adjust how much it's impacting that noise profile. So if we just hit play, and then I'll adjust the impact it has, and we'll see how it sounds. So we'll hit play. Welcome to My NRCS Career. Whether you've been an employee at NRCS for years or you're just getting started with us, the My NRCS Career Virtual Career Center can help you to hit Control-Z to return that back to us. But you can hear how that impacts the change in the voice. Now, if you want, you can turn repeat back on by hitting R or just clicking the button. You can just play the noise back, and then you can just pull it down until you start to see the noise coming back. You see the yellow as the noise coming back in. Just pull it up until it's just gone. And that way you'll have the minimal impact to the voice with maximum impact to the noise. So it's kind of a give and take. So we finished with our noise reduction saga, and now it's time to actually start editing our audio. Now you can see I recorded the first slide here. This is the introduction slide. And then I stopped. I gave myself some space. I recorded the second slide here. This is the career group overview. Reaper creates items when you record, and items are awesome because what you can do with these things is just grab them. You can drag them around. You can reorder them if you want to move this one over here or back. You can pull them down. Oops. You can pull them down to another track if you need to just move it to another track. Say one was going to play over the other if one was background music. So there's a lot of great things you can do with items in Reaper that don't exist in Audacity. These don't happen. The other cool thing about items in Reaper is if you make a mistake, it's always there. You can always just grab the edge of it, drag it, and get back the stuff you deleted. So if you made a mistake in your edit and you need to get more back, we can just pull it right back. You don't have to undo all the work you've done to get back to the previous state. The other thing I really like is this dual view of the waveform and spectral. So spectral is just kind of a colored view. It gets brighter when it's louder, and it's lighter when it's softer. Lower is the lower frequencies, higher is the higher frequencies. And you can see like this breath here is really quiet, and then you can see this is as an NRCS a little louder. And also the cool thing about spectrals, once you get really good, you can see that these are typically your sibilant sounds, like your S's and F's and things. So this is probably an S sound. Overview of some of the ways. So that helps you kind of visually see the words as you're editing, which will come in handy when you've got to stitch these together as you're editing out your mistakes. So to turn our spectral view on is up here in View. Oops, I missed. Up here in View. Then you've got Peaks Display Settings, and these are your peaks. So we want to change the way they display. Now I have it set to spectrogram and peaks. This is the default is peaks. So you just see the actual waveform. Spectral peaks colors the peaks. Spectrogram just shows you the spectrogram, which is way too hard to edit with. Just basic editing. And spectrogram and peaks gives you both. So that's what I like. And then you can change the color here if you want. You can change the contrast and brightness if you have a hard time seeing it, just by grabbing and dragging. But I like mine basically to what the default is. So we'll go ahead and close that. Now we're set. And Reaper should save that setting next time you log in. What we want to do first is take our two things and cut the mistakes out. I didn't really make a lot of mistakes, but that's not a big deal. You'll still see the way we are going to edit these quickly. Up here, we have a few buttons that we need to worry about. Yours probably looks a bit like that. That's the default toolbar. You can actually change this by hitting Customize Toolbar and pulling out the ones you find you don't use. I've got mine set up for the main ones I use for voiceover all the time. But I'll show you the main ones so you can get around, follow along with me a little bit easier. All right, now that we've set this to their default look so you can follow along a little bit better, I want to take you through editing according to clicking for mistakes. So what we've got here is we've got two mistakes that I made on the same sentence. So I like to edit from back to front because it helps me find these. If this was a really long file, I'd start at the end and I could scooch through here and I go, oh, there's the second mistake I made on this one. So I didn't see a third one. So I know this is the start where I got it right. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to hit S on my keyboard, and that's going to split that. Now I've got that item all by its lonesome. Now I can go back and I can go, oh, this was the first mistake because there's a single click. And here is where I started this. So I'm going to go ahead and click right here. I'm going to hit S to split that again. Then this whole section, this is all mistakes. So I can just delete it. And if I delete it, it leaves this big old gap. Well, if you turn ripple editing on, which is this little button, click that, ripple editing happens. Now what happens is when you delete something, anything that's beyond that, further down the timeline, will move back the amount of the item you deleted. So this item is 7 seconds. So what I'm going to do, if I delete this, it's going to move this all the way back to right here, 7 seconds. And you can see how it slides it back like that. Now I can see, thanks to the spectral, I can see this breath. You can see it kind of comes up and then disappears. It might not sound very good like this, so let's just play it back. Tracks in this group. Soil conservation. Yeah, that breath doesn't sound that great. So again, this is where items in Reaper really come in handy. I can come back. I can see where this soil starts right here. Pull that off. Pull this one closer. Grab those together. And now, your tracks in this group. Soil conservation technician and soil conservationist. There we go. So that sounds pretty good. Now we'll scooch back. I didn't really make any other mistakes here. So we'll leave this one for that, and we'll go ahead and pull out the mistakes of this one. So here's my mistake, scooting back to front. If I hit play here, what do we got? This tutorial will provide a brief overview of this tutorial will provide. Click here. This tutorial will provide a brief overview. So I'm going to go ahead and split that, and delete. And there you have it. So now, many options that await you, so you can grow your career at NRCS. This tutorial will provide a brief overview of some of the ways you can use the Virtual Career Center to grow as an NRCS employee. Now if we scoot all the way back here, I think this is a little pre-chatter, so what am I saying? Now we're rolling. We're rolling. You can see the waveform with my voice there. And I think this is welcome to my NRCS. Welcome to my NRCS career. Cool, so I'm going to get about half a second here, so I know how far we're back. Half a second is just a good padding time to so the file doesn't play like immediately when someone hits play. So we've got that. So now we run through it. Welcome to my NRCS career. That's good. We can check our edits. This tutorial will provide a brief overview of. That one sounds good. At the end of your recording, sometimes when you hit the space bar to stop, it picks up the sound of it, right? So you can hear here. Yeah, it picks up the sound of that. So we get about half a second here. Half a second is a good tail to a track too. Now we've got one, and then we've got a little bit of noise here. So we'll get half a second of tail, or half a second of head space. And we got a little noise there. So we'll go ahead and grab half a second of this one. And to shrink these, you just got to go to the end, see where the arrow changes, and pull it back. Now we're all done. And we've got our two pieces set up. So now we're going to talk about making sure the loudness is good enough, because honestly, these are a little quiet. So we're going to turn them up a little bit and make sure the volume would be level in both of them. So one's not louder than the other. It's always the same consistency. And we'll go from there. Now that we've edited out our mistakes and we've trimmed our top and tail of the files, the next thing we need to do is make sure that the volume is good across the board. So we'll do that by using another effect. So we'll go in here to our effects chain and we'll hit add, and it'll open up the effects window. And what we're looking for is a limiter. Now the limiter we're looking for is this master limiter plugin, which should automatically be installed. If it's not, the same controls apply to a lot of these different ones, like MGA.js limiter is another one that, but I just like master limiter a little bit better. It seems to sound a little cleaner to me. So master limiter just has a bunch of sliders, and there's two that we're worried about. We're worried about threshold, and we're worried about limit. Those are the only two we need to worry about. So let's go back in this file a little bit so we can play back. And what we want to do is we want to limit the maximum loudness, that's the limit, to -3. Now, -3. The maximum loudness an audio track can typically get to, you can see the scale here. These are all negatives below 0. 0 and above is dangerous territory because you start getting distortion. It's called clipping. -3 is right about here, and that's about the loudest you want to leave a little bit of headspace in case you need to lay an audio track like a music bed or something underneath it. -3 gives you a little bit of headroom, so adding that audio track doesn't make it all really loud. And then the threshold is the point at which it starts to turn stuff up, and -3, if that's our limit, isn't going to help us. So what we need to do is hit play and then adjust this threshold down until it starts sounding good. And this will turn up the quieter parts without boosting anything past the -3 limit. So we'll hit play, and I've found that this is usually pretty good right around 5.5. So we'll start at -3 where it was, and we'll hit play, and then I'll turn it down to about 5.5, -6, and we'll see how it sounds. If you've been an employee at NRCS for years, or you're just getting started with us, the My NRCS Career Virtual Career Center can help you discover and plan out the many options that await you, so you can grow your career at NRCS. This tutorial will provide a brief overview of some of the ways you can use the Virtual Career Center to grow as an NRCS employee. You can explore many possible careers. So I do like it about -6. And you can hear as you turn this down how much louder the quiet stuff gets. So let's go ahead and close this now. And we've pretty much got our volume set. If you've been an employee at NRCS for years, or you're just getting started with us. All right, now we've entered our home stretch. So we've got our 2 sections recorded. We have them edited down. We've done some noise reduction. And the last thing we need to do is get them out of Reaper into an MP3 so we can plug them into whatever our authoring tool is that we're going to need to use. And ideally, they'd come out individually and the files would be named properly so you would know where to drop them in your authoring tool without having to listen to the file and compare it to your script. So we're going to use what's called regions in Reaper to actually name our files before we pull them out, and then when we export them, they will be pre-named for us. So that'll save us a bunch of time in the end. To do this, all we've got to do is zoom in a little bit, nope, not too far, so you can see the beginning and end of each item that you want to work with here, and highlight all the way across that item. And then you can right-click off of the items down here to create region from selection. So you click that, or you can use the shortcut key Shift-R, and that will create a region here. You can see it's region number 1, and it runs from this area to this area. And if you need to adjust it a little bit, you can do that here. What you can also do with this, and I'll show you another way to rename this, but you can right-click it and edit the region, and then you can give it a name. This is 1.1 Introduction. You can also see here that it's 42 seconds long. It gives you a little bit of information about that region's ID number 1, etc., etc. You can also change the color here if you want to make the region stand out a little bit. Maybe you're not sure about it, so you can make it red, and later on maybe come back to this one because maybe that's one you're going to change later and you want to cut in some change. Anyway, that's how you make a region really quick, and we'll do that on the next one as well. So we'll just highlight, right-click, insert region, or create region from selection, or Shift-R. Then we will rename this one. But this time, let's actually rename this one through the other spot where you can actually rename them kind of quickly. So if you go to View, and then you select your Region Marker Manager, you can see Region 1 here is Introduction. Region 2, these can be sorted. Region 2 can be double-click, and you can edit it right here. So we'll grab this, create group overview. Double-click, and we'll add that there. There, now Region 1 is Introduction. Region 2, Career Group Overview. And you can change the color here if you want. And then we'll talk about the render matrix in just a second. It'll help us decide later on if we need to just render one file versus another. So we've got ours named. This is what they're going to be called. And the other cool thing about regions, I just did it on accident. If you click these, it jumps you to the regions. So if you need to edit, say you got 40 regions here, you need to edit 38, you just scroll down to region 38, click it, and you'll jump right to it. We've got our regions named. Let's get them out of Reaper. To get them out of Reaper, you can go to File, Render, or you can use the shortcut key, which is Option Command R, or I believe it's our Alt Control R on Windows. And that will open the render to file. So you can see here we have a few options, and actually we have quite a few options. I'll show you the ones that are really important. Up here at the top, this is where we're rendering from. We want to render our master mix because we only have it'll render all of the tracks, and we only have one track, so we're just going to render master mix. And instead of entire project, we want to render our project regions. So here we got 2 regions. That lets us know how many files we're going to have outputted here. And this is where we're going to drop them. And that looks like the perfect spot. What I like to do is drop them into a render folder, because Reaper can add a whole bunch of backup folders or backup files to this media folder. So I'm going to drop it right here into this render folder. So if you type / and then a name, that's going to automatically create a folder for you. You put another /, and then this is what we want to name our files. I want to name our files based on our region name, like we mentioned earlier. We can use wildcards to do that. So if we go to wildcards, we've got a whole bunch here. But if you choose region, that's going to render it based on the name you gave the region. And then if you look at render 2, it'll give you a sample of what we're going to have. So we'll have render 1.1 introduction.wave. We'll change wave to MP3 in a second. Your default sample rate is probably already going to be 44.1. Mine's 48.8 because most of my clients ask for that, but 41.1 is probably where you're at, and I wouldn't mess with that. You want to change your channel to mono. You don't want to render as stereo because it's unnecessary. So if yours defaulted to stereo, you want to change that to mono. Then you can leave the rest of this stuff alone. Output format, you want to change to MP3 because that's what we're going to need. And then you want to select your bit rate. By default, it might be kind of high, 256. Honestly, for just the human voice, 192, even down to like 96. Most podcasts are rendered at 96. The file size is going to be smaller, and the difference in audio quality is going to be negligible. I tend to render higher for my clients just because they typically, if they want an MP3, they want a really high quality, but most of them will want WAV. But you can always default to about 192, that's somewhere in the middle, or like I said, 96. You're probably not going to notice it, but the files are going to be nice and small. So that's kind of up to you. And then finally, we can hit render 2 files, and Reaper spits them out, and we're done. You can click Show in Finder here, or Show in Explorer, I believe it says in Windows, and it pops open the Finder window, and there they are. Introduction and career overview. This raw folder or raw file is the one I sent out ahead of time to edit on the fly with everyone. But then you're good to go. You can see this one, 676K, and this one's 1 meg. So we're all done with rendering them. Now, if you want to use the matrix, say later on, you're like, oh, I need to change number 2, and we fix number 2. You just want to render out number 2. What you can do is go to View, Region Render, or Region Marker Manager. You can also do this in the matrix, but it's a little bit of a confusing view there. Go to Region Marker Manager, and then we can choose in Render Matrix here, we can choose Master Mix just for this one. So that's Region 2. We made a change, we updated that. We set Master Mix to that. Then when we go to File and Render, we can change Master Mix Source to our Region Render Matrix because we just set this one to be rendered out in the matrix. Now you can see it's only going to render one region. You can see it again here. It's just going to render the one we set to Master Mix. If you want to see the matrix, I'll show you that real quick. The matrix just shows your regions going up and down here, and then what you want to render going east and west. So if you wanted to render both, you could. If you want to render one, you could do that. Whichever of these is selected will render out. So now we just have this one. We can see we're just rendering one. We can see render one file. You can leave all the rest of the settings the same, so it should have defaulted to the last settings for the project. It'll let you know if it already exists. Hey, 1.2 already exists. You can either increment it, which will just add a -002 to the end of it, or you can hit overwrite, and it'll write right over the top of it, and now we'd have a change to 1.2 using just the render matrix, which is super handy too. And there we have it. That's how you render individual files in Reaper to the name that you want them to be based on your regions. Hope this was helpful for you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I really don't mind an email. I love talking shop. So send me an email, host@diynarrator.com, and thank you for watching.